Hello fire signs Aries, Leo and Sagittarius. Welcome to the Cancer New Moon. You'll find the timestamps for your rising sign listed below. Hello Aries rising, welcome to your horoscope for the new moon in Cancer happening on July the 18th at 4:20 or 4:32 a.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. So it's an early morning moon. So if you'd like to do all of your think work and magic work the night before on Monday, it'll still work. You can do it then. You can get up really early in the morning too if you wanted to and sit in that stillness. That might be a fun thing, but also it's a Tuesday. You don't have to. So let's have a think about Cancer. Let's have a think about your fourth house, your home, your family, your sense of belonging. And let's think about the ability that a new moon has to reinstigate or to refresh that space. If you have a relationship with your family, it might be a nice evening to give thanks for that privilege and to maybe think about how those relationships can be developed moving forward. You might think about your caregivers, you might think about your ancestors and thank them for their guidance, thank them for their protection, and strategize different ways that you might make those bonds stronger. If you don't have a relationship with your family, it might be something to do with your autonomy in a sense of belonging and safety. We can develop family relationships with a multitude of different people. They don't always include folks that are related to us by blood. They can be very dear friends. They can be people that have come into our lives that have shown us that they care for us, that they're unafraid to provide comfort and nurturing. That's a really beautiful thing about the evolving quality of humanity, isn't it? Is that we get to rewrite the definition of a healthy family. We get to rewrite the definition of a family unit. There's language around that has us willing and wanting to go back to the traditional unit that used to exist. But for some of us who we really know that never really existed for us, and how we've been able to seek out tender loving care and a sense of nurturing from other people, that it never maybe really existed in the way that folks say that they want it to. And so I think at a new moon in Cancer, Aries, it's going to be really like a lovely time for you to be to honor your experience. You could come from really supportive parents, and you could come from a family that had your back the whole way, and you've got great relationships. That could be something that you experience, and that's beautiful. That's really rare, I will say. And so that's something to really celebrate. If you don't, then you're going to look out into your sphere and you're going to give thanks to the folks that you consider family. And you're going to think about those relationships and how they can evolve, how that can be nurtured, how that sense of Cancerian emotional loving care can be nurtured and can evolve as you move forward. Now, an hour and a half after this new moon, the nodes finally change signs. So the dragon's head will be leaving Taurus and will have entered Aries. So all eyes on you, babe. Over the next 18 months, we're going to be beginning a story that has you at the center of it, that has your self-development at the center, that has your soul's rising intention at the center. And there may almost feel like there's like a deluge of extra emphasis on you and you alone. The dragon's head puts the dragon's tail directly opposite in Libra, your seventh house of relationships and of connection. So what I anticipate for you, Aries, is that over the next 18 months, there may be a real reconfiguration that feels out of your control at times. And I'm not saying this to kind of spook you at all. I think it's going to be really valuable and necessary, though, that your relationships go through a regeneration process, and the way that you are expected to show up and expected to provide and expected to be this version or that version or the other version of yourself in your relationships. And this can be your lovers, this can be your clients, your close working relationships, anybody that you would consider a nearest and dearest, like good dear friends as well. But the dragon's tail is shaking off the excess. It's shaking off what you don't need anymore, what you can't do anymore. And the dragon's head is perhaps making your individuation a little bit insatiable. Now, this isn't to say that you're going to be a selfish little bee, but it's definitely going to provide you with a bit of room and a bit of scope to stake your own claim. The Taurus and Scorpio eclipses over these past 18 months can maybe serve as a bit of a clue as to what you may have in store for yourself. So think about from November of 2021 until now, and think about the kind of the grit that you've found as far as accruing resources, as far as developing a sense of independence around money and around growth, and also your talents and your values too, how they've really come into higher focus over the last 18 months. And the dragon's tail allowing some shedding to occur in the way that your energy was bound and wrapped up in that of others. Perhaps there was ways that you felt beholden to certain people, contractually bound, perhaps. There was a responsibility of your resources being interwoven with another. Perhaps you were kind of really learning how to grow and take care of yourself, earn your own coin. That could be something that was really kind of showing itself in the past 18 months, and kind of that you felt reluctant to rely on anybody else's bank balance or anybody else's resources to prop you up. Perhaps these were big lessons that were occurring for you, Aries, that were probably a bit difficult, I might say, especially because the 8th does talk about that. It also talks about intense, full-on emotional connection too, and you've had to let that go. You've had to sort of allow that to sort of settle. The last eclipse that's happening in Taurus will be in October of this year. So the dragon's head will be in Aries, but the moon will be close enough in Taurus that it will be eclipsed partially. So there'll be one more final lesson as far as your values and your resources in October. But this is kind of preparing you and prepping you for this next journey, this next 18-month period where your soul's rising intention. I don't mean to sound like a hippie tripper, but the first house is about us. It's about our individual selves. It's also about what we're made of, what we're capable of on the inside. And this isn't so much about this. This is about what I'm doing here, what I can provide, what I can learn about life itself. You see, that puts the tail in your 7th house. And so you may go through some big metamorphosis over the next 18 months, Aries. I gently am confident that you will, and I'm gently looking forward to seeing that development and seeing how your relationships adapt to that change as well. The tail does shed. The tail does allow things to fall away. But what I like to do, like in the tarot after a tower moment, is to witness what remains. So I think that this isn't I don't expect that you're going to have big falling outs or tell people to F off or whatever. You may, and you'll work through that. You might do that, you might not. But ultimately it's about your ability to relate, your ability to enter into committed relationships, your ability to commune, that is going to shift and going to change, and possibly like in perfect timing. Yeah, it might be the perfect time for that for you, Aries. All eyes on you, babe, and all eyes on your development too. Now, what I've said to probably everyone, and I'm going to say it to you as well, is that over the next couple of weeks, we might just be very mindful of how we are speaking to other people, because there could be a compulsion to lash out and act out and say things that we mean, but maybe our tone might be a bit off. And I want you to kind of just be mindful and aware of that. Mars is going to be in face-off with Saturn on the 21st of July, so like 3 days after this moon. And that's quite a tense moment. And there might be a sort of, aggression rising that you're going to deal with in your beautiful way. And that's not to silence you, you're going to let it out, Aries, but you're going to do the follow through as well, the aftercare. The aftercare of any argument's really important to devote yourself to. You can't just fly off the handle and blurt it out and let off your chest and then walk away whistling. You've got to keep in mind who was on the receiving end of that and how they're feeling and how they're going to process that intensity from you. You've got a lot to teach us about letting it off your chest, about anger, about getting it out. We've got a lot to teach you about the aftercare of that instance. And so you can do that. So just be mindful of who you're shitty with. The culture itself right now, you can feel that tension. You can feel that there's sort of, as we move closer to November as well, not to say that the USA is a sinkhole for us all to lose ourselves in, but there is a kind of like a protracted trigger response that perhaps a lot of people are feeling. We don't wish to go back to that kind of bombastic chauvinist rhetoric. We don't wish to go back to that part of our culture. We're ashamed of that part of our culture, and that part of our culture is sort of exposing itself right now. And I think Pluto in Capricorn is really, justice is going to be served, Aries. It is triggering though when we, this sort of like wall of bullies that seems to be running the world at the moment. And if you come from an environment where you were really bullied for who you were when you were younger, that can start to get your back up. It can be really, really, really awful to have to kind of live amidst that kind of bullshit again. So maybe that's where the anger's sort of coming from too. But if we look forward to these eclipses in your 1st and 7th house, we can actually look forward to that rather than be frightened of it, then maybe your sense of self is going to be galvanized. Maybe there's something about your identity that you're actually going to name once and for all and have it really be known. And your 7th house will have to deal with that because that's who you are. That's your right as a human citizen. I mean, living in a privileged country, I imagine, if you're listening to my stuff. But this is where we mobilize too, because once we claim it for ourselves and once we know it to be true, once we go through all of the official paperwork too, checks and balances, cross those T's, dot those I's, then we can mobilize and then we can stand up and speak up and stand in solidarity for folks that are vulnerable, folks that can't do it themselves. It's powerful work. And we're on our way to that, as much as it feels spooky at the moment because the propaganda is rising. We look back in the past and we look back and we're like, not again. We're not allowing this to happen again. We resist. Our existence is an act of resistance. Never forget that, Aries. It's powerful words. They're not mine. They're my friend Max Bookbinder. But they're true. All right. Also, Venus will be stationing retrograde in Leo for some 4 months from the 23rd of this month. So this next couple of weeks is going to be a bit sticky, and there might be, as I said, some miscommunications. But I want you to think about your creative practice, Aries, and I want you to think about the year 2015, and I want you to think about where the gold was and where the value in that was and what was happening for you creatively in 2015 that hopefully we can reincorporate into our experience now, and we can bring some of that hopefully sweetness, hopefully inspiration back into your creative practice, back into the way that you're making art or you're expressing yourself. You're going on dates as well, like you're showing, love and sensuality. Venus in your 5th house, I imagine there's going to be some deep, 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 like romance, maybe, that might be coming back into your environment. So if there is, think back to 2015 and how those parts of your life were playing out. This isn't to say we're going backwards to go forwards, but there might be something in there that you can be like, oh, this was going on for me. Like I met this person, or I was working on this project and I was feeling really free and inspired. If that's something that you can remember, then maybe this Venus retrograde period might be hearkening back to that. I got the King of Swords, the Queen of Cups, Judgment, and the 9 of Wands. All right, honey, so it is feeling like a bit of a slog. It's feeling like a bit of a slog. It feels like you've been walking through mud and you've been doing all that you can to keep those inspirational fires burning. Hopefully this Venus in Leo will restoke some of those flames for you, honey, because you've been doing really great work and you've been really committed to your position as an artist, as being self-possessed and self-expressed. Your body walks around on the street, anywhere you go. As I said, your existence is an act of resistance. What you embody and what people receive from you. Imagine folks younger than you seeing themselves in you, Aries. That's something that I want you to never forget, that the work that you're doing now will last forever and has touched so many folks and has inspired them to be themselves. And I understand that it's like, can I go on? Can I keep doing this? Do I need a rest? Do I need to change things a little bit? Do I need to change my focus? I want to talk to you about cat power. Sorry. When I see the King of Swords, I always think of cat power. I think of Chan Marshall. Stop me if you've heard it before. But she's coming back to say hello, and she's coming back for me to tell you that she persisted and that there was a triumph of the mind with Chan Marshall, that there was a very, very broad and deep and intense journey of the mind that she had to go through in order to fight and continue. There was a real sense of injustice that was like she was so absorbent of anywhere, could spot it, and it drove her to distraction. But what Chan Marshall did was went through this form of therapy, that form of therapy, the other form of therapy, continual commitment to healing. And through that, found voice again and rose up, and has probably written some of the best work she's ever written just in the last couple of years. I feel that you need to speak to someone, maybe, Aries. There's someone that is like emotionally available. Their cup's full. It's not going empty. They've got the time and the space to hear you out. Like, speak to them, talk to them, tell them how you've been feeling. They will love it. They will love to help you because they can now. The Judgment card isn't something to be frightened of. It's not a judgment. It's just a question. It says, are you going to live out life half lived? Because you can, and at this stage in life, we can only do what we can to get by. But when it comes to your magic, Aries, it can be exhausting, and you can feel like you're sort of out of puff, out of steam. You've run out of matches. In those times, You find your Queen of Cups and you find the one that you can sit with and you can talk to about how you've been feeling. You can let it off your chest, your fears, your vulnerabilities, your sadness. You can let it all out because they want to hear that from you. Your vulnerability is just as beautiful as your sparkly nature, Aries. And your vulnerability is going to help you continue on your magical quest. The silver life is the one that you've picked, babe. The magical life. You probably picked that when you were born. And you got to be brave to pick that life. And you've got to give yourself the rest stops when you're exhausted. That's your reading, Aries. Say thank you and have gratitude for your chosen family at this new moon. Think about those relationships and how you can foster them and grow them. And get ready for a journey of self-actualization, self-identification. It's going to be a good 18 months, Aries. If you're still here with me, throw me a crab in the comments, won't you? I can read your birth chart at umaruby.com. You can tip me at buymeacoffee.com/umawooby. And I'll be with you in 2 weeks for the full moon in Aquarius. So we'll get to release some of the tension about our fear of the human condition. We'll get to remember who our friends are and hold hands and face it together. We'll get to mobilize. I'll speak to you then, Aries. I love you. Bye. Hello, Leo rising. Welcome to your horoscope for the new moon in Cancer, happening on July the 18th at 4:32 a.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So it's going to be very early in the morning on Tuesday. So if you'd like to do your well wishes and spell wishes on the Monday the night before, you're most welcome to, unless you wanted to get up super early and do it on Tuesday. But let's focus in on the energy of Cancer. Let's focus in on the energy of your 12th house, and let's sort of link those two together. A new moon is a time where we get to ask for what we hope to have happen, what we hope to see materialize in our life. Cancer is cardinal water. Cancer is an emotional initiation. There's something really unafraid about Cancer when it comes to feeling, when it comes to nurturing and to care, to love. For you, Leo, this is your 12th house of your unconscious mind. The 12th is where we come into contact with things that are hidden about ourselves, things that are sort of unquantifiable almost in language too. We can't really we know them, but we don't know how to talk about them because it's kind of impossible. In the ancient days, the 12th house was called the house of bad spirit, which is an interesting term. In modern astrology, there was a lot of language around incarceration attached to the 12th house. So you could see things about sort of like lunatic asylums and all of that kind of thing happened in the 12th. In astrology, right here, right now, we know to look back and to recognize what other folks were incarcerated for over history wouldn't fly today. Perhaps the 12th house speaks about innate internal nature. It talks about something hidden, but something that is limitless in its possibility. I like this relationship of like emotional initiation, of care and warmth, and a kind of feeling of like being unafraid to show love and affection. And I like this in your 12th house. There might be a good relationship that you have with your dreams. You may have access to that as like a working mechanism. I'm not sure if you do lucid dreaming or anything like that, but there could be a greater sense of connectivity with your unconscious. And it has a lot to do with an emotional kind of intensity and integrity. There are parts of you, Leo, that are really unseen, and there are parts of you that really do need to be loved and cared for and nurtured at this time. There's a gentility and a sensitivity and a vulnerability that is somewhere a couple of steps removed from the boldness of your bonfire, from the fire of your hair and your presence, from the beauty of your external world. Cancer's hidden behind there, gently, gently. And so to have a new moon in the 12th house is always a really great night to go inward in privacy and to gently excavate those hidden worlds, perhaps ways in which you have a relationship with maybe a spirituality that is difficult to describe. It could be a relationship with your own psychology that is not for public consumption. It may be a bridge that takes you back to past lives, to different incarnations on this planet. Whatever your belief system, Leo, the 12th is definitely in relationship to something much vaster than what's here and present in harder reality. So it's a lovely moon to work with. It's very private, it's very gentle, very vulnerable. So I would take this time to be just that, to be soft and kind to yourself, and to maybe be so bold as to ask your dreams to reveal something to you. Show me the way. What are you trying to tell me? Because I'm ready and I'm available to receive it at this new moon. Now, an hour and a half after this happens, and I tell you what, if it's 4:32 a.m. and you're in the southern hemisphere of Australia, this could be like deep sleep. Something may occur for you. What I'd probably do is keep a little notebook next to your bed and do some automatic writing the moment that you wake up on Tuesday morning. Just what happened, write it down. At 6 a.m. on Tuesday, the dragon's head is shifting signs from Taurus into Aries. So for the last 18 months, there has been some sense of like a push and a pull between your most public self, the part of you that's really visible and accessible, what you wish to be known for, what you wish to leave behind, your legacy, as it were. There's been the dragon's head right there. So there's been like a power surge, a sort of like almost like an insatiable quality of like chasing that part of life over the last 18 months. There may have been a lot of like sort of excavating and kind of going through, kind of really coming into a better understanding of what it is that you are doing with your time and what it is you're willing to present. And the dragon's tail was wrapped around your fourth house of your home, your roots, your ancestry and privacy. And there may have been some shedding that occurred there over the last 18 months too. So these are big lessons. I think eclipses in the 10th and the 4th house, from my experience, can be pretty incredible, and they can kind of put a jolt to our system in terms of our public-facing self and our private self too. The different sides to our coin, how we're sort of access all areas, what people are consuming of us, and also the hidden aspects of us too, what we keep for ourselves. The dragon's head in your 10th house over the last 18 months hopefully has been teaching you a thing or two about what your physical presence in public provides other folks, and also what your legacy can mean. There may have been a change of tack for you, or a rerouting of perspective over the past 18 months. There is going to be one more eclipse in Taurus in October, which might be the final chapter of that story. But I think the shedding of the 4th house may have been a little bit harder to bear. There may have been things that you had to let go of in terms of your home life, your ancestry, your privacy, the way that you feather your nest. There may have been things that you really had to let go of in that space. And that's vulnerable. Back to what we were saying about Cancer, there's this emphasis on vulnerability at this lunation, Leo. So The dragon's head is moving from Taurus into Aries. So it's going to be moving from your public perception into your world of publishing and your world of expanding your mind and your spirituality, the world where you journey, you take big adventures, leaps and bounds to chase that dragon. So I wonder, in this rerouting of public versus private, what can you put into words, or what don't you know enough about that you're looking forward to gleaning more information and expanding your perception on that too? Is it in relationship to your spirituality? Is it in relationship to what you've chalked up so far and what you think that you're ready to offer and to provide? Is there a body of work that sort of seems to be at its like crescendo point where it might be ready, you might be ready and willing to start unleashing this to the world? This will put the dragon's tail in your third house, which is your village, your neighborhood, the way that you communicate. So there might be things that you're leaving behind again in order to seek out further instruction or further information, further knowledge. I like this, Leo, and I think that for the next 18 months, it's going to be a beautiful time to really just roll with those tides, roll with those waves. And if opportunity presents itself for you to stand behind a lectern and give lecture, or if it provides itself that there's a journey to take over here by a specific, line of thought, line of thinking, by a specific mentor is presenting an opportunity for you, then I think take it. This feels like a big metamorphosis. Leo, it feels like the person that you were has shifted. And what you thought was the most consumable part of you, or you thought was the most, publicly agreeable part of you, is shifting. And it's those lessons of shedding, those lessons of loss in the fourth house that have really sort of galvanized this intent for you. When you look to the future and sort of think to yourself, I will be known for this. I will be known for this, which is much different to what I thought initially would be my legacy. It's a powerful time. It's a powerful time, and I do wish for you to think back to the year 2015 as well, just gently, gently, gently. Because the planet Venus, who brings beauty and sensuality and pleasure and art and creativity to our lives, beautiful energy of Venus, will have stationed retrograde on the 23rd of July. So about 3, 4, 5 days after this new moon, they'll station retrograde in Leo, your first house, your house of the self, the soul's rising intention. And so the last time that Venus was retrograde in Leo was in the year 2015. So what kind of magnetic qualities were occurring inside of you in the year 2015? What were you being drawn to? What aspects of yourself that do include Venus were presenting themselves for you in 2015? And is that something that you can incorporate into your lived experience now? Is Venus offering you some guidance here, some lessons about yourself, some opportunity to enjoy, some opportunity to feel that sensuality from a space much different to the way that you used to feel it? If 2015 can be a sort of signifier, even if it's just the way that you sort of like think about, just the way that you perceived yourself, that could be something. Perhaps you felt the company and comfort and sensuality of Venus in 2015, and maybe that's a space where you can like re-embody that relationship. I'm going to pull you some tarot cards, Leo, but I think that, it's a gentle, cozy sort of moon. I mean, I think Cancer season's been pretty emotional for a lot of us. And we're about to enter Leo season 2. You know, we're about to enter the the time of the lion. So, you know, I'm sure that I'll be tonguing my hair more often. Well done. Well done, Leo. What a beautiful culmination of lessons. I've got Leo and Aquarius and Taurus and Scorpio on this card. This is the World card in the tarot. And it talks to us about the fixity of our position, all the fixed signs, the signs that can go the distance, the signs that are brave enough to see it through, stick their 2 feet in the ground and push, hold the weather, hold the tension. They're reliable. And what you've learned over these eclipses in Taurus and Scorpio, your public perception, your private perception, there's been a lot of things that have been coming to the forefront for you, a lot of things you've been really realizing about yourself that were always there, but just needed some time to be nurtured. I think about that sometimes in relationship to our inner child and like the trust that you need to foster in that little one again, because perhaps they're hiding because they can't trust many people. But maybe these eclipses in your public and private have provided enough space for you to reacquaint yourself with that little lion. Tarot seems to think so. Tarot's telling you congratulations. This card doesn't come out very often. When it does, and I reckon in singularity, there's no need for any other cards. You've done a really good job, Leo, and you've managed to receive the lesson, receive the growth. What you're about to step into feels pretty vast, and you may be jumping on 10 million different planes and trains to get there. Ninth house can sometimes have us moving around. If that's the case, enter these new spaces, enter these new relationships, enter these new commitments to education or to study, spiritual study, enter them as the person that you are now. Take the mask off, because it's beautiful under there. All right, Leo, that's your reading. I love you. Throw me a crab in the comments if you're still here with me. That would be great. I can read your birth chart or your tarot at umaruby.com. You can tip me at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby, and I'll be with you in 2 weeks, and we're going to celebrate the full moon in Aquarius. So we're going to focus in on your house of relationships and of love, and we're going to give it all back. We're going to release what we don't need anymore in regard to how we love. So until then, you take care. I'll speak to you soon. Bye, Leo. Hello, Sagittarius rising. Welcome to your horoscope for the new moon in Cancer, happening on July the 18th at 4:32 a.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So this new moon, this lovely black night where we get to ask for what we hope to see have happen in our futures, where we get to make our spells and cast our wishes, it's all happening for you in your 8th house. Cancer rules the 8th for you, Sagittarius. The 8th is where we kind of learn to grieve. The 8th is where we find ourselves contractually obligated to the energy of someone else. It's where we feel that intensity and we love it and we learn from it, and also where we have to learn to say goodbye to. Our resources can sometimes be intertwined with other folks in the 8th house. There's a real kind of like collaboration that might happen there, or a cohabitation. And I like that the sign Cancer rules this space for you, Sagittarius, because that tells me that above everything, you're unafraid to feel the intensity of those emotions. You're unafraid to show up and to provide care and comfort for folks in your life. That slings and arrows be damned, your emotional ecosystem is always ready to instigate and to initiate in that space. That the lessons of grief will have your body be moved by them. That your commitment to other folks does have your resources interwoven with theirs too. That if you love someone, you'll do anything for them. I think that's really beautiful. And it's a really nice new moon to make a wish with. And to, in some ways, kind of just sit back and think to yourself how grateful you are for emotional intensity in this life, for love and comfort and care and kindness. It's pretty harsh out there. It's pretty cold sometimes. And so when we look to our beloveds and we feel an emotional honesty and emotional intensity and integrity with them, we can be grateful. It kind of warms us up from the inside too. It's a nice moon, Sag. What I will say is that an hour and a half after the new moon in Cancer, after our little journey with collaboration and maybe with grief too, perhaps there might be some emotions that sort of rise to the surface for you at this moon. And perhaps there might be some remembrances of folks that you've had to say goodbye to. That might be something that comes up, and you can rewrite those relationships as well. I've had a few dances with grief this year, and it's been a roller coaster. And a great mentor of mine said to me that sometimes the relationships that we lose to death, sometimes they improve after death. There's some relationships that never really go away, and we can hold audience and sit with those that we miss and those that we love and have conversations with them. And kind of there's an extra layer of vulnerability that can kind of sometimes reveal itself too, because you've got nothing to hide. They've got nothing to hide anymore. And they can kind of get in there to a little further layer of intimacy. It's just a nice thing to think about. That might be a nice thing that you can think about at this new moon too. It's Cancer season, why not? But as I said, an hour and a half after this happens, the dragon's head is finally shifting from Taurus and into Aries. So over the next 18 months, we're kind of at the very beginning of an 18-month story of power surges, of releasing and receiving, releasing, receiving. And I like this one for you, Sagittarius, because it feels pretty creative to me. I would imagine that the next 18 months, whether you like it or not, you're going to be feeling so juicy and creative and ready to release something out into the world, ready to share something. You'll be working on something, I imagine, that has your creativity in flow. It would be the perfect time to do so. I think that there's going to be a lot of shedding in your sense of community and friendship. There's going to be a lot of kind of revelation probably in that, and hopefully some things that you can kind of maybe realize that you can let go of that maybe aren't your responsibility as far as the plight of the human condition. Sorry if that's sounding a bit whack, but go with me. You're not responsible for everyone's well-being, Sagittarius. However, I do understand that in times like this, it can sort of be like, holy shit, I'm worried about this person, that person, the other person. This cruelty is pretty, it's a lot to bear. Hopefully this dragon's tail in your 11th house will allow some room for you to shed some of that kind of perpetual responsibility, and the dragon's head will be forcing you into your 5th house. So it will be sort of really showing up for you in your creative zone. And when there's eclipses, it's like, yeah, as I said, like someone's pulling the plug, someone's pumping the gas. Like it's like there's going to be like an possible overt example or overt like upswell of creativity for you. You don't have to be an artist per se, like with a brush or a microphone, but like there's something about the way that you kind of look out and experience the world, how you translate, process that information, and then how it comes through you is what I'm talking about. I think that we're all artists. I really do. I think that we could probably, do with a bit more freedom creatively when we're younger, and we're hopefully could be a bit more encouraged to express ourselves and to create no matter our skill level. That's something that's sort of, it's a bit sad to me, and I kind of like to encourage it whenever I'm in the company of kids too. Like whatever they're doing with their texters or whatever, it's brilliant, I reckon, because they're expressing themselves. And that's not to say that everyone's a genius, but I think that everyone has the potential to be a creative genius. It's just sort of like we're told to work with our strengths, and we're told to work, to a certain level of expertise, that sometimes the creative flow can be stifled a bit. I only say this because what am I trying to say? Like when I was a kid, I had a natural propensity to create things, to dress up and to draw. Like they were my two big major things that I loved to do. And it was how I expressed myself. It was how I translated the world around me. I was quite quiet and quite shy, but I would draw pictures and I would put on costumes. And that's how I would, translate the world around me. I had talent when I was younger, and so that was really fostered. My authority figures, the folks around me, encouraged me into that because I was good at it. I would like to think that everybody could afford to be a little more encouraged into their creative expression as time goes on. If you've got kids as well, just because it's in the fifth house, like the fifth house can sometimes speak to children. So that's not to say that you're going to have lots of babies over the next 18 months or anything like that, but like there's going to be a reinvigoration of your inner child creative self. And as a generation, as a culture, hopefully we are moving towards a space of highlighting expression as being really important, highlighting like things to do with our hands and our eyes and our hearts as to be really important, not just our academia, not just, our literacy, not just our numbers, not just our, sports prowess. There's something vulnerable about creativity because you're sort of bearing something that's much deeper, aren't you? It's going to be a nice 18 months, I think, Sag. I can kind of feel it, yeah. And it's not to say that you're going to like not think about the 11th house, not think about humanity. It's kind of on all of our minds right now. We can't help it, but maybe, as I was saying before, it's like less of that burden of responsibility on your shoulders alone. It's sort of like shit, like I'm going to crumble underneath this, oppressive system. Your creativity is probably going to help you wiggle out of that, and probably show other people too, by your example, how they can wiggle out of that too. The best art is made in times of crisis. The best art, absolutely it is. Like the most beautiful forms of expression and artistic creation come out of crisis. And so if you're feeling the burden of either if it's, it's the global crisis of like the health of the planet, if it's the financial crisis that's sort of burgeoning, if it's the disparity of the haves and the have-nots, if it's the kind of reality that the culture of growth at all costs is just done with, if you're worried about your brethren, if you're worried about your chosen family being subjugated and being blamed for all of these other problems, I mean, the conservative voices in power will say anything to maintain their power, that's for sure. And so now we see this like fascist regime rising and this propaganda rising. We also see a lot of these puppets, a lot of these authority figures from the past, all being served a bit of Pluto and Capricorn right now. I think even in this country, there's sort of certain politicians that are sort of like on the bench, in front of the bench, like having to, like justice is being served to them. I believe that we've gone through such a huge period of growth as far as Me Too, as far as Black Lives Matter, as far as all of these different structures of oppression being held into account, that now as things are, people are worried about their livelihoods, they're worried about putting food on the table, they're worried about the health of the planet. And everyone at the top's like, oh, wasn't us. Oh, what about them? Oh, no, it's them. It's the family, the nuclear family that's disintegrating. It's this sort of, it's the sanctity of man and woman that's disintegrating, that's the problem. That's why you're unhappy. It's not because greed isn't good. It's because of that. This is kind of the push and a pull of the mind at the moment. I think that your creative self-expression, I think you've got a lot to say about this, is what I'm saying, Sagittarius. And I think that if you want to use this dragon's head in the 5th over the next 18 months, I think that we're kind of moving from this, like, perhaps like, I feel that there was something about your like internal workings over the last 18 months and your sort of sense of grounded reality that was really coming into focus. I kind of feel that like you've done a lot of work as far as trusting yourself and as far as like doing the work, like going inward and like resolving the past, reconciling the past for yourself, and kind of giving yourself a healthy sense of boundary and reality right here, right now. And I think that that's all going to aid in the way that you're expressing yourself from now on. Maybe you can realize that there is actually power in numbers, there's power in the collective voice, and that at times of crisis, the best protest songs come out, the best art collectives show up, the best communion starts to develop, and talk about Holy Communion. Well, folks like me have a different way of doing that. And it always seems to happen at times of absolute crisis. And I think that you're going to be some sort of figurehead for that. You need to express yourself and you need to do it because some people can't. Some people aren't allowed to. Some people are silenced. And you're in a place of privilege enough where you can speak not on behalf of them, but you can speak in solidarity with them. That's what I think, Sagittarius. And I got the Lovers, the Chariot, and the Page of Cups. And I like this because if we kind of think about this pep talk that I've just given you, and we think about this sort of almost like this choice that needs to be made, it's sort of like, okay, so I'm kind of looking outward. I've been touched by some sort of angel. Remember that show with Della Reese, Touched by an Angel? I used to love that show. But, sorry, I'm going off track. The wand of inspiration, I feel, is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger for you, Sagittarius. And probably we're going to come off the back of this Cancer season and really kind of feel in our bodies just how emotionally intense some of that was, and how like we are back in our bodies. We can sort of feel, the more that we reach out to people and tell them how we've really been feeling, the lighter our load. You're going to put all of this to really good use, and there's going to be, it's not as I'll say it again, you're not speaking on behalf of someone else, you're speaking in song, in solidarity with them. So whatever it is that you are creating and willing to put out into the world over the next 18 months, know that the timing's kind of perfect. Know that like pleasure is paramount in times of crisis, and know that the worst thing we can do is stick our head in the sand and do nothing and just allow it all to happen. I said it to Aries, but I think I'll say it to you too, Sagittarius. Our existence is an act of resistance. It's not my words, it's my friend Max Bookbinder. They coined that term, but it's true. Sing out, Louise. Do your thing. Be yourself. Be proud. Keep creating. Keep making magic. We need it right now, more than ever. All right, that's your reading, Sagittarius. Drop me a crab if you're still here with me. I love you very much. I'll be speaking to you in 2 weeks for the full moon in Aquarius. And you can send me some tip money at buymeacoffee.com/UmaRuby. I can read your birth chart at umaruby.com. I'll speak to you soon. Take it easy. I love you. Enjoy the rest of Cancer season. Feel the love. Get ready for the lion. Bye.